Okay, now if our parallelogram looks like this, we could choose this to be the base, and our altitude would run perpendicular, right angle to the base, to the opposite side or to a vertex, as long as this is perpendicular, right? So we could have base here, altitude here. Now if that's this triangle, that's not a very convenient choice for the base and the altitude because neither one of them goes in the direction of a coordinate axis, right? Now if I do a general parallelogram, there's no guarantee that anything's going to be parallel to an axis, okay? But for this parallelogram, we notice that one side is parallel to the y-axis, right? So in the case of this parallelogram, well, we have an alternative. If the parallelogram is like this, we could choose one of the other two sides as the base, right? So now if we call this the base, then this could be our altitude. And our altitude runs parallel to the x-axis, right? Base is parallel to the y-axis. The altitude has to be perpendicular to that, so it has to run parallel to the x-axis. Okay? And that's going to be a lot more convenient because from here to here, now, if this is our altitude, well, not quite from there to there, a little lower. Here's our altitude. Well, isn't our altitude the same as this? This and this are the same? Because this is running perpendicular to the x equals 2 line, it has to be parallel to the x-axis. Both of these lines are perpendicular to your altitude. Okay, so we have a right angle here as well. So here we have just a rectangle, and this is the side of the rectangle that's opposite this one, right? Now you don't have to go into that much detail for this course, although you should understand that much geometry, and it's worth thinking through, okay, because geometry can come up in a lot of different places. And unfortunately, people come out of geometry courses still having trouble reasoning this stuff out, okay? That really, our geometry courses should do a better job of enhancing reasoning, okay? And should make this kind of reasoning completely obvious. I know that's probably not the case with most of you. Some of you haven't had geometry for a decade or more, okay? And you probably learned to think it, so you probably see what I'm saying, okay? But even if you've had it recently, you know, a geometry course that gets you through the SOL doesn't make you think anything. Okay? Teaches you how to choose multiple choice. And that's the goal of all our courses these days. Okay? They're trying to improve that. They're aware that it's really bad. Okay? And there are some significant improvements being attempted. I'm not totally optimistic that within the lives of your grandchildren it's going to really happen, but I've got my fingers crossed. There's some good people working on it, but there's a lot of politics involved, so that's why I'm not particularly optimistic. If you let the good people do what they know they should do without interfering with them, I think we would get something good. But it would be expensive, and that's another thing. You want to pay higher taxes? Nobody wants to pay higher taxes. And people make voting decisions based on, let's not, yeah, well, maybe you reallocate the money. It's all political. I don't want to get into it. I'm just saying it's a complex situation. And there's no simple fix. So, okay, anyhow, get off my pulpit here. There's your altitude, right? Perpendicular to your base, it goes to an opposite vertex Or you could say it just goes to the opposite side. But if this thing is just drawn just a little steeper, you can't get from the base to an opposite side. You have to extend the base, but you can do that. Okay, well, the point then is, we know the altitude. Do we know the base? Okay. Well, we pretty well clearly see that then the altitude is the run from here to here, right? That's 5 minus 2 is 3. We don't have a direct way to find the base. So how are we going to find the base?
You said 5 minus 2? The altitude?
Now 5 minus 2 is going to be your altitude. Your base goes from here to here, which means your base goes from one of these lines, along one of these lines, from this line here to this line here. How are we going to calculate that?